All right, this is lesson 10.2, the sine function. Our objectives for this lesson are to find the amplitude and period of the sine function and to sketch the graph of the sine function. So the first thing I want to show you is I want to show you how the graph of sine relates to the unit circle. We know that the sine is periodic. You can see here it goes in waves. And here we have the unit circle. So sine, it starts at 0, you can see that. This is 0 on the y value. Remember, on the unit circle, sine is the y value. And here we can see it going up the unit circle with the special right triangles. We get to the top, sine is 1, and that's the top of our sine graph. Here at 180, we're back at 0, and sine is back on the x-axis at 0. Down at 270 degrees, we're at the bottom. Sine is -1 at the minimum. And now we're back to 360. We've gone one period of sine. If you go around the circle, you just keep going around and around and around, and you can see why sine is periodic. Next, I want to look at the graph of sine a little closer. So sine A sine BX, and I want to look at how the A and the B affect the graph. So I'm just going to move this slider so you can see that A, the number in front of sine, it's not affecting the x-intercepts, but it is affecting the amplitude. When it's negative, it reflects it over the x-axis. You can see that sine is now going down. If I have it here at -2, the amplitude is 2. When I bring it up here to +2, the amplitude is also 2. So A, the absolute value of A, happens to be your amplitude. What about B? You can see that B here, it affects the number of cycles that are happening. With sine, we say how many cycles are from 0 to 2 pi. So if you look here on this graph, I can see 1, 2, 3 cycles when B is 3, happening between 0 and 2 pi. So you can see that's 2 pi right there, and I've got 3 cycles that happened from 0 to 2 pi. So B tells you the number of cycles. So to sum up, the sine function is related to the unit circle. The unit circle has an amplitude, like its radius of 1 with a midline at 0, and so does the graph of sine. And the unit circle goes around for 360 degrees, or 2 pi radians. The general form of the graph is y equals a sine b theta, where a is the amplitude of the function and b is the number of cycles between 0 and 2 pi. Therefore, if you wanted to know the period of a sine graph, you could take 2 pi and divide it by b, the number there in front of the theta or x, and find out the period. So let's try putting this into practice. If we want to write the equation for a sine function with this information. So this says that there are 3 pi cycles and the amplitude is 7. So that means that we're going to write our graph. Remember that amplitude is A, so that's just going to go out front. And then the number of cycles is B, and that's going to go in front of our theta or x. So the graph, the equation for this is 7 sine 3 pi theta. All right? Next one, let's try 5 cycles and an amplitude of 1/2, right? So the amplitude is A, it goes on the outside. Well, I guess we don't need a parenthesis there yet. And then the number of cycles is your B. So this will be 0.5 sine 5 theta. So it's not too hard to do, right? All right, next. So in this problem, we have 0.25 cycles, and the amplitude, it says absolute value of -4 is 4. So the reason why they did that is because they're telling us that the A value is -4. But remember, amplitude is always a positive value. So if you have negative value, it's an absolute value of it. So even if your A is negative, the amplitude is always positive. All right, so this equation is going to be -4 sine 0.25 theta. All right, now let's go the other way. So we're given the equation now, and we want to know what are the critical values, right? So the number out front, the absolute value of it is your amplitude. So in this problem, the amplitude is 8, right? And then we know that the number in front of the theta tells you the number of cycles. Okay, so let's go one step further now. So we talked about the number in front tells you the number of cycles. So how do you find the period from that? If you remember, it was 2 pi divided by the number of cycles. So the period is 2 pi divided by the number of cycles. So 2 pi fifths is 1 period. So in other words, if we wanted to sketch the graph of this now, the amplitude is 8. So I can say it goes up to 8 and it goes down to -8. And then the period is 2 pi fifths. So that means if we wanted to draw one cycle of this, it's going to end here at 2 pi fifths. So the sine graph starts at 0, 0, and then it goes up and comes down, hits right in the middle, and then goes back. But this one is a -8, so it's going to be reflected over the x-axis. So that means it's going to actually go down first, come through the middle, and back. Okay? All right, next one, -2 sine 7 pi theta. So again, the number out front is your amplitude, the absolute value of it. So in this case, our amplitude is 2. Okay. Then the number in front of the theta, 7 pi, that's your number of cycles. And if you want to find the period, we're going to do 2 pi divided by the number of cycles. The pi's are going to cancel in this, so our period is 2/7. Sketch the graph. So our amplitude is 2. Okay, that's terrible. And then the period is 2/7. All right, I'm getting a new pen, you guys, so don't worry. It's only going to be terrible for the first couple lessons. I'm waiting for my new pen to come in the mail. Okay, so 2/7. So this graph is also negative, so it's also starting in the middle and going down first. And there we go. All right. Next one. So our number out front is 3. So our amplitude on this one is 3. That's a terrible 3. 3. Okay. And then the number of cycles is 3 pi fourths, which means that our period is going to be 2 pi divided by 3 pi fourths. Now remember, 3 pi fourths is a fraction. if you're going to divide by a fraction, it's easiest to flip and multiply. So instead of 2 pi divided by 3 pi fourths, we'll flip that and multiply by 4 over 3 pi instead. Flip and multiply, right? So the pi's are going to cancel, and we get, because you can imagine that's really over 1. Remember invisible ones? 2 times 4 is 8, and then 1 times 3 is 3. So our period here is 8/3. So if we wanted to graph it, here's 8/3 out here. And then our amplitude this time is 3, so we're going between 3 and -3. This is a positive 3 in this equation, so we are going to go up first. So up through the middle and down 1 period. Okay, let's try this one. A sound wave has a minimum of -3 if its midline is at y = 2. What is its maximum? Let's just draw a quick picture of this, right? So we're going to have a sound wave, here we go, and a minimum at -3. Now it says the midline is at 2. So what is its maximum? Okay, so if we're going here from -3 to 2, we went a distance of 5. So that means that the amplitude here is 5. So to go from 2 and up 5 from 2, 2 plus 5 is 7 for the maximum. Next one, a sound wave has a maximum of 4. If its midline is at y = 1/2, what is its minimum? So let's draw a picture again. So here's our nice little sound wave, and we've got a midline at 1/2, and the maximum is at 4. Okay, so what is our amplitude this time? We're going from 1/2 up to 4, so that's an amplitude of 3.5. So if we want to go down 3.5 to find the minimum, you're starting at 1/2 and subtracting 3.5. 1/2 minus 3.5 will put us at -3. Next question, if the period of a sine function is 5 pi, how many cycles does it have? So you remember that 2 pi divided by the number of cycles, which is b, equals the period. So I can set this up. Okay, now if we want to solve, if you ever are trying to solve a fraction like this with your variable in the denominator, you can just switch the places of those two. You can do 2 pi over 5 pi equals b. Why does that work? So if you imagine 10 divided by 2 equals 5, right? And what happens if I switch those? 10 divided by 5 equals 2. It's a true statement still. So you can switch your numbers like that. So if you're solving for something in the bottom, you can just switch. Okay, so 2 pi over 5 pi equals b. The pi's are going to cancel. So there's 2/5 of a cycle from 0 to 2 pi. All right, next problem. Find the period of the sine curve and then write the equation. So let's look at this picture here. Okay, so I'm going to look. What is the amplitude of this graph? So I'm going to look at this and notice the graph is going from a maximum of 4, a minimum of -4, so our amplitude is 4. So my equation is going to start out, whoopee, as y = 4 sine. Now we need to know how many cycles are between 0 to 2 pi, right? B is the number of cycles. So let's first just look at what's the period, right? So if I trace along this graph 1 period, there's 1 period. So it looks like 1 period is 2, right? On the x-axis, we ended there at x = 2. So 1 period is 2, and so from the previous problem, we can do 2 pi, oh, okay, sorry about that, 2 pi divided by 2, and that will give me the number of cycles. So it's pi. So 4 sine pi theta. And that's our equation. All right, next one. Sketch one cycle of the sine function -2 sine 0.5 theta. Be sure to label the amplitude and critical values. All right, so let's take a look at this. So labeling the amplitude, we see that the outside number there is 2, so this goes from 2 to negative 2. It's starting negative, so we're going to go down first. Our sine graph will go down first. All right, now our b here is 1/2. Whoops. Our b is 1/2. So if we want to find the period, we're going to do 2 pi divided by 1/2. Now remember, when you're dividing by a fraction, you can flip and multiply. So that tells me that it's 4 pi, right? So 1 period is 4 pi. So then it's going to hit in the middle too. Halfway to 4 pi is 2 pi. If you wanted to go more and go half and half where your mins and maxes are going to be, so that would be 1 pi and that would be 3 pi, right? Labeling all of the critical values. All right, so we're going to start at 0, 0. It's going to go down first and then hit a max there and back to start. And last problem. So sketch 1 cycle again. Okay, so let's see. This says 2 sine, so our amplitude is 2. It's a positive 2, so it's going to go up first. What's our period going to be? So we have to do number of cycles. Oh, whoops, let's erase that because we want to flip and multiply, right? So 2 pi, we're going to flip and multiply. Pi's are going to cancel. So it's 5 times 2 or 10 over 1 times 3, 10 thirds. So what's halfway between 0 and 10 thirds? That would be 10 sixths. Divide the bottom, right? And so now we can go, this one's going to go up first, through the middle, and back to start. All right, so that's that. Make sure that you take a picture of your in-class assignment with all of this filled out, and then try the homework, take a picture of that, and email them both to me so I can get you credit for this assignment. And you can log in on any A day, either at 10 or at 1 o'clock. You can show up anytime. So go on to Zoom, click that link that I sent you in your email from your phone or from a computer with a webcam. It's easiest to just do it on your phone. It should open the Zoom app that you can download for free. And you can ask me any question on this kind of stuff that you want. All right? So thanks a lot, and make sure you email this stuff to me.